Tumawag si Presidente Franklin Delano Roosevelt, na lahat ng able-bodied Filipino citizen mag-report sa training center. War was imminent, kaya ganun.
My father, he came here in 1936. He was sent here in 1936 by the U.S. Army, and he was still here in 1942 when the war started.
So yung mga Pilipino, they rolled down these big boulders para sa mga Japanese tanks. Kasi nasa area na sila nun dito sa Mount Samat, everything na eh. Naubusan na sila ng ng mga ammunitions. The tallest cross in Asia. It's 92 meters, so it's almost same as the height of Statue of Liberty in New York. So we see this is the Nagbiag na Bato. It's the masterpiece also of Professor Napoleon Abueva. It's our national artist. They call it the war depiction from First World War to Second World War. So we can see all this statue, Rizal, our national hero. So it's within here, Nagbiag na Bato means a buhay na bato. This cross is aligned also to the monument of Rizal Park in Luneta. So the flagpole of Mount Samat, and this cross is aligned to the Dr. Jose Rizal in Luneta Park. Sana yun po malaman ng mga bata, yun talaga to sinisignifies ng malaking cross na to. It is to immortalize the agony and glory of the Filipino soldiers and American against the aggression. Sa Tagalog, mas maganda siguro para maintindihan ng mga bata na pag-alala sa katapangan ng mga magigiting nating mga Pilipino at Amerikano laban sa mga Hapon.
My father always told me about the incredible bravery of the Filipinos, and whenever he spoke of actions, it was always the Filipinos that were throwing themselves against the Japanese machine guns. I don't want to take anything away from Americans. A lot of them died. Many of them, hundreds and hundreds died. But I'm just going by the color painting my father painted for me of the war. He told me the only bravery, outstanding bravery he saw was by Filipinos. For one thing, only 2 out of every 10 men fighting in Bataan were Americans. 80% were Filipinos. Because of the tremendous effort by young Filipino soldiers and Americans in a foreign country, they stopped the greatest force in Asia in World War II, stopped the Japanese dead in their tracks, and held them back for 4 months before they surrendered. Corregidor held on for another month, so it set the Japanese back 5 months in their conquest of Asia. I'm still in awe of all the men, especially the Filipinos. 67,000 Filipinos around the death march and about 11,000 Americans. So that gives you an impression who was fighting. It was the Filipinos who were doing most of the fighting and most of the dying in the battle for Bataan. And between 5,000 and 10,000 Filipinos died on the death march in 7 days. Perhaps that's what's wrong in today's world. The young people, they're so far removed from the war that they feel no connection to it, and I feel a little bothered by what they're grandfathers and great-grandfathers went through, but I witnessed what my father went through. So I came here in 2011 on a tour for 3 weeks. At that point, I met my future wife, and when I came and I drove up and down Bataan, I noticed the death march markers were in such poor shape. I couldn't believe it. Some markers we couldn't even find. They had been grown over by bushes and weeds, and they were covered with mold and mildew and algae. They were so black you could drive by them and not even notice they were there. Many we had drove 3 or 4 times before we finally saw them behind a bush that had grown up in front of them. I bitch a lot on Facebook when the markers are being damaged, and initially I blame the DPWH, but and they took the heat, and they got calls from congressmen and senators when I find actually about 11 of them were badly damaged or totally destroyed. And it turns out it's really wasn't them, it was their contractors that they hire to do their work for them. For 7 years, 138 markers every year. We gave up every weekend beginning in November, and we finished usually the second week in March.
Kung makakapagsalita ang bawat marker, ano kayang gusto niyong ikwento sa mga Pilipino yung ngayon at saka yung mga susunod na generation ng mga Filipinos?
Oo nga eh. Kung makakapagsalita siguro sila, siguro ang unang-una nilang sasabihin, always remember me. Siguro, huwag niyo akong kalimutan. Nakakalungkot. Parang kahit man lang at least dito sa DepEd Bataan, sana itanim sa utak ng mga bata kung ano ang history ng Bataan.
I was asked one time by a TV crew 4 years ago, I think, after a marker had been destroyed, the reporter said, "Mr. Hudson, why do you think the Filipinos have forgotten their history?" And it didn't take me long to think about it, because during the years we were painting markers, my wife and I ran into a number of people who they knew that these were Death March markers that we were working on, but they knew nothing of the Death March. You asked them, "You know what these are?" "Yes, sir, these are Death March markers." "Do you know about the Death March? You know how many people died?" "No, when was that?" They didn't even know it was in World War II. So I learned before I was asked by the reporter that nobody had forgotten their history. They were never taught their history. So you cannot forget something that you never knew.
Nag-aral ako sa first year college lang.
Okay.
Ngayon pumasok ako, 19 years old, sa Army. Tumawag si Presidente Franklin Delano Roosevelt, lahat ng able-bodied Filipino citizen mag-report sa training center. War was imminent, kaya ganun. Siyempre, sumunod ka sa order ng mga opisyal mo. Dahil sa tawag nga ng Presidente Roosevelt, may order sa iyo. Pag nandoon ka na sa field, wala nang isip yun kung hindi pumatay ka o ikaw ang mamatay. Nung primero, maganda yung buhay namin dahil bago pa eh. Nung matagal-tagal na kulang na sa pagkain at mga sa gamot, parang nanghihina kami. Nung may order na mag-surrender, dahil nakikita kasi ni General Edward King na wala nang mangyayari sa mga sundalo niya. Kung sige ang laban, maaaring mawala lahat. Nag-order na siya ng surrender. Laban sa utos ni General MacArthur na walang surrender.
This is Lieutenant General Wainwright. Subject, surrender. garrison on these places would be eventually destroyed by aerial and artillery bombardment and by infantry supported by tanks which have overwhelmed Corregidor. After leaving General Homer with no agreement between us, I decided to accept, in the name of humanity, his proposal. You will therefore be guided accordingly, and will, surrender all troops under your command to the proper Japanese officers. This decision, on my part, it was realized, was forced upon me by means entirely beyond my control.
Ano yung pagkatahimik naaalala mo? Bumabalik sa'yo.
Dahil ang naalala ko talaga, marami akong mga kasamahan na nakikita kong namamatay. Namamatay sila. Mabuti ako siguro awa na Diyos, naawa sa akin. Mangyayari talaga yun sa ira. Kaya yun ang hindi ko makakalimutan talaga. Mga kaibigan ko, matalik kong kaibigan. Nakikita mong nawala na ang buhay.
Sabi nila ay ang mga Amerikano daw ang nagpanalo sa gera.
Hindi tama rin yun. Hindi. Dahil lumaban din kami. Magkasama naman eh. Kaya doon sa yung Pulo Bataan, narinig mo yun, na magkasama. Hindi maaaring sabihin nilang Amerikano lang ang kuwan, naghihirap. Pareho kami. Well, the message that I'm going to relate here today was written in its entirety by Captain Salvador P. Lopez. It was delivered by Third Lieutenant Normando Ildefonso Norman Reyes and broadcasted by the Voice of Freedom, then stationed inside the hallowed tunnel of Malinta Corregidor on that fateful day of April 9, 1942, more or less 77 years ago, during that darkest hour when the history of our country as a nation was then at stake. It is about the fall of Bataan. Bataan has fallen. The Philippine-American troops on this war-ravaged and blood-stained peninsula have laid down the ground. With heads bloody but unbowed, they have yielded to the superior force and numbers of the enemy. The world will long remember of the epic struggle that Filipino and American fought up in the jungle fastness and along the rugged coast of Bataan. They have stood up uncomplaining under the constant and grueling fire cut off from all sources of help in the Philippines and in America. The intrepid fighters have done all that human endurance could bear. For what sustained them through all these months of incessant battle was a force that was more than merely physical. It was the force of an unconquerable faith, something in the heart and soul that physical hardship and adversity could not destroy. It was the thought of native land and all that it holds most dear, the thought of freedom and dignity and pride in this most priceless of all our human prerogative. The adversary, in the pride of his power and triumph, will credit our troops with nothing less than the courage and fortitude that his own troops have shown in battle. Our men have fought a brave and bitterly contested struggle. All the world will testify to the most superhuman endurance with which they stood up until the last in the face of overwhelming odds. But the decision had to come. Men fighting under the banner of unshakable faith are made of something more than flesh, but they are not made of impervious steel. The flesh must yield at last. Endurance melts away, and the end of the battle must come. Bataan has fallen, but the spirit that made it stand, a beacon to all the liberty-loving peoples of the world, cannot fall. Thank you.
January 9th, 1945. This is Lingayen Gulf, Luzon. 4 divisions landing abreast. We had expected a very different kind of greeting than these cheering Filipinos, who told us the Japs had pulled back 2 days before. These are guerrillas. Don't let the clothes fool you. Men like these kept the war going in the Philippines long after the Japs said it was over.
Bago pa man daw dumating ang mga Kastila sa Pilipinas, aktibo na ang lalawigan ng Cebu sa kalakalan. Ang matatag nitong ekonomiya nagbigay daan para kilalanin ito bilang Pin City of the South. Pero hindi lang sa komersyo nakilala ang Cebu.
Viva! Sí, Señor Santo Niño Jesus!
Hindi pati nga sa pag-usbong ng relihiyon sa bansa at kultura na tunay na pinagmamalaki ng bawat Cebuano. Ang labanan sa Mactan ang isa sa mga nagmarkang kabanata sa kasaysayan at simula di umano sa pagkakatuklas ng Pilipinas. Dito nakilala ang matapang na dato ng Mactan na si Lapu-Lapu nang mapaslang niya ang mananakop na si Ferdinand Magellan mula sa Espanya.
Cebu pa lang ang na-conquer, Cebu City pa lang. And Mandaue, and Iloan, and pag-abot ni Magellan ang ilang na-meet. And then Magellan arrived and said, I'll show to you that Spain is powerful. Kamahanan, we have so much power. We can rout.
Kinilala bilang isang bayani si Lapu-Lapu Pero iba raw ang layunin ng datu sa pakikipaglaban sa mga dayuhan noon.
The fight, to be clear, was never about nationhood. Mabayon tani kay atong nasod. No. There was no nation to speak of. For Filipinos today, Lapu-Lapu is a hero. Why? Because he could have embraced Magellan and earned money and become put a friendship, special relations with the Spaniards. He was only thinking of his territory. But by doing that, he proved nga pwede di ay ang native mo fight of invader rather than mo embrace the invader.
Bagamat nagapi ni Lapu-Lapu si Magellan, nagpatuloy ang mga Kastila sa pagtuklas ng mga pulo sa Pilipinas. Sa gitna ng himagsikan, nanatiling tahimik ang mga Cebuano hanggang sa dumating sa Cebu si Pantaleon Villegas o mas kilala sa tawag na Leon Quilat.
Dito sa Cebu, ripe na talaga for a change. Marami ng discontented elements. And here comes Leon Quilat, promising to lead them with anting-anting, etc. All that sort of stuff. Parang psychological prop against... Kasi ano lang sila, mga itak lang kontra rifles. Ang hirap pagkalaban mo tapos replay, tapos yung sa'yo itak lang. So what they did, tinuruan, Leon Quilat yung mga tauhan niya na dapa muna kayo, maghintay kayo ng 5 shots, after 5 shots, saka kayo lumusog. First battle dito sa Tres de Abril, ilan lang yung casualties sila kontra sa mga Katsila.
Bagamat isang Negrense, tinanggap si Leon Quilat ng mga revolusyonaryong Cebuano para pamunuan ng mga pag-aalsa sa lalawigan.
She was given a letter from Aguinaldo to the Cebuanos na ito, ina-appoint ko dito na maglilid sa inyo. In a sense, he was the spark dito sa Cebu to really kick it off. There was readiness, pero wala sila nakikitang leader. When he came, nakita siguro nila, typical mistizo ba? Sila malaki. May ganong personality. Hindi naman siya nag-order lang na sulog tapos magpapahuli siya. Hindi. He was really in the forefront.
Hindi raw inakala ng mga Cebuano na matapos ang madudugong labanan ay uusad pa ang kanilang ekonomiya, lalo na noong panahon ng dating Pangulo na si Sergio Osmeña.
The relationship between Don Sergio Osmeña, at that time about 25, 26 years old, and William Cameron Forbes, Governor General, nga gibuhos niya halos tanang kwarta sa Cebu for port development, one dam still here, Buhisan Dam, which provided water directly to houses in Cebu City. Only Manila had that before, and then Cebu City sunod. So katunga relationship nila was very special that within 10 years, 1900 to 1910, Cebu saka siya ning boom. Ang pagka-Queen City sa Cebu happened during the early period of the American colonial. Sa Sugbo, he was the political kingpin here until World War II. Don Sergio in history is often seen as a benevolent Cebuano who provided everything for Cebu and for the Visayas. And that the war changed him. After the war, when he saw so much devastation, na discouraged siya, he did not like to be president anymore. He was in fact forced to run for president in 1946, reluctantly. The Cebuanos are proud of him. He's the only president of Cebu.
Noon pa lang daw, ipinakita na ng Cebu ang kanilang kakayahan sa pagpapaunlad ng kanilang bayan. Pinatunayan na kaya nilang makipagsabayan sa Maynila.
Alala ko yung bago ko binuksan yung pintuan ng sasakyan namin. Sabi ko, Lord, Panginoon, sabi ko, wag muna. Maliliit pa yung anak ko, sabi ko. Bigyan mo pa ako ng isang litrato lang, sabi ko. Okay na ako.
Paano niya nagawa yan? Yung buong bansa, buong mundo, believe sa kanya. how was he able to make that decision na ito sa Pinatubo, yung to tell everyone to get out of the way?
Well, first thing when Chino said Pinatubo, medyo na-excite ako. And then when he said shoot the shooter, mas lalo ko na-excite kasi more or less alam ko kung sino yung kilalang photographer na kumuha ng iconic shot na yan. So pero kinonfirm ko, sino ba yan? Si Alberto Garcia nga ba? Tapos sabi niya, oo siya. So nung pagkasabi niya ngayon, parang okay, sige, kasama na ako dyan.
Yan, halos ganyan nakalapit sa amin. Yan.
Alam mo na kapag dumikit sa iya, matutunaw ka.
Oo, siguradong patay. Hindi ka bubuhayin yan, alam ko.
Sure death kayo nun, pero...
Abo ka, abo. Kung ano yung position mo, yun na.
Hanggang ngayon, I get goosebumps pag naalala ko yung nangyari. Nadidinig ko sa mga tao na ang galing ng tatay mo. Tatay ko yun.
So I'm there to cover a reunion of sorts. One that really put him on the map in terms of photography because of that shot from that eruption.
Biniyayaan pa rin ako ng Panginoon para makapagkwento sa pamamagitan ng larawan at maging silbing inspirasyon.
For the longest time, I've been planning to go up pero hindi natutuloy. It's hard to describe actually. Pero tapos nung nakita ko siya, yung crater, wow, ang ganda. Nakaka talaga. The word is overwhelming.
Tao and si Sir Albert. And for me to witness that overwhelming response to the situation.
Ngayon ko nasaksihan na napakaganda niya. Napakaganda niya. Hindi mo iisipin na maghahasik ng distraction sa buong Pilipinas .
Ang Albay ay isang probinsya na nakaharap sa Pacific Ocean. Ang mga tao ay nasanay na nasa pagitan sila ng napakalawak na karagatan at bulkan.
Nandito po tayo ngayon sa Kansawa kung saan po ay makikita ninyo ang natitirang bahagi ng simbahan noong 1814. Ito po yung church at ito po yung convent. So kung titingnan nyo po, ito po ay dating bayan na sakop ng Tamalik na ngayon po ay binubuo na lang ng mga natitirang parte ng simbahan at saka po ng konbento. Meron din po tayong pyramid wall na tinatawag doon sa dulo kung saan po siya ay yung La Escuela de Cansawan ng unang panahon. At meron din po tayong ayuntamiento doon sa dulo na sa mga susunod po na pagpunta nyo dito, kumbaga makikita nyo din po yun para ma-present namin sa inyo kung ano po ang kabuuan ng Cansawan. Madami po yung na-amaze.
Ang Bulkang Mayon, pagka yan ay sumabog at nagkalat ng abo, yung abong yan ang nagpapataba sa lupain ng Albay. Ikumpara mo ang mga dahon, ang mga kahoy, lunting-lunti talaga dito sa Albay. Dahil yung Mayang Volcano nga, dalawa ang dala niyan. Yung panganib sa iyong buhay at yung pangpataba ng lupa.
Yun nga sinasabi nilang malaking disaster din po. Pero siya din po yung nagdadala ng negosyo sa amin. Kumbaga kabuhayan din po sa mga kasamahan namin. May mga tindahan po kami. And out po sa Mayon, nakakagawa po ng mga produkto na galing sa kanya. Sa stone, sa gravel, tapos sa sand. So nagiging kabuhayan po yun ng bawat isa dito. Gusto ko ipakita sa kanila na ganito kaganda, kagandang malaman kung ano yung istorya na meron kami dito ngayon.
Tinagsi ko nga ining Mayon, magayunon pagguruhilngon, alagad makangirhason pagka nag-uusot.